Now, living with EVs, a lot has been said about it. A lot has not been done about it, and that's what I've done. Done something about it. I have lived with this, the Tata Tiago EV, over the last 3 months, and today I'm going to go from 100 to 0 in this, and along the ride, I'll tell you how my ride has been. Now, what do I mean by when I say 100 to 0? Obviously, some of you guessed it right. You're going to drive this car from 100 to a 0%, and along the way, I'll also tell you how that will allow you to do your weekly office commute anywhere between 100 and 300 rupees. Now we've started off, and I'd just like you to know that we've started off at 100%, and the indicated range, at least as of right now, is 189 kilometers. Will we get there? Let's find out. But first, you know what? A lot of EV owners, because they do not have to visit petrol pumps, often neglect tire pressures, and that's been the case with me also. So a quick stop at the petrol pump to top up our air pressure in our tires, and then off we are. Now, we've topped up our tire pressures, and I'm heading to a coffee shop out on the highway that we really love. And the thing is, I'm going to be driving through the city, which I am doing right now, and I'm getting onto the highway. So basically, I'll be driving the Tiago EV in a mix of both city and highway conditions. And let's start with the city first. But a quick range update first. So we are right now at 96%, and our range has come down to 168 kilometers. The reason for that is I've just switched on the air conditioning, and the range straight up went from 186 to 168, which is a jump of about 18 to 20 kilometers. So if you're going to be using the Tiago EV, know this, with the AC, you're going to lose about 20 kilometers of range when you switch on the air conditioning. Now let's be honest, with 189 kilometers of indicated range, the Tata Tiago EV is never going to be the perfect highway car. Yes, we might be going for a highway coffee drive, but it's never going to be the car that gets you from town A to town B and back, and you don't have to worry about charging a lot. So in that case, it's gonna really shine in the city, and it does. Its compact proportions really help it out when you're trying to park the car, when you're trying to make gaps in traffic, and it's not hard doing that. You don't have to really be a hoonigan in traffic to try and do that. It's just how the car works. It's just so small, you find your way around traffic, and it's easy to drive. The steering, I mean, it's got a little bit of heft to it, but it's easy to operate. There's not a lot of effort that goes into it. The pedals, they're easy, they're light to operate. So in that sense, the Tiago EV is a really easy car to drive, which makes it great for the city. Apart from that, the motor, I have to say this. Now, EVs are generally known for their mind-boggling acceleration, and it's zippy. I'll give it that. It's obviously not outrightly quick, but for the city, it does the job. You've got 3 modes of regen. Now, regen is basically engine braking that you get on internal combustion engine cars. Well, engineers try to replicate that in electric vehicles by giving you what's called as regen. And basically, the electric motors, they've spin the opposite way and try to slow you down. This car has got 3 modes of regen. Now, mostly I've only used stage 1, which is enough to drive the car, and most of the times you do not need to get off the throttle, just lift off a little. You do not need to get onto the brakes, and the car slows down the desired amount. If you're in really bad bumper to bumper traffic, only then have I ever experimented with the 3rd setting, which is a lot, to be honest. If traffic gets a little bad, I generally go to level 2. You'll find your comfort, but I think level 1 and level 2 are the ones that work best inside city limits. On the highways, maybe you can try with level 3, but then you don't want to be really suddenly braking on highways. So that's obviously going to be a personal choice. One thing I really enjoy in this car is the music. The touchscreen experience also, while small, is colorful. The touchscreen is not the quickest, but it's not laggy in any sense. It does the job well. It gets the basics right. Even the instrument cluster does the same thing. It's not the best looking unit out there, but all the information is easily readable. It's easily available. You don't have to hunt around a lot in menus to find what is where. Everything that you need to know in a glance is right there. Now, one thing that's always been a staple of Tata cars has been good ride quality. Manav had the Altroz with him. He was raving about its ride quality, and the Tiago, being an EV, it's the same. Now, I expected the ride quality to be a little bit stiff because it's obviously a heavier car, but I mean, it is stiff, but it is not bothersome at all. I live in Noida, where there are what you call tabletop speed breakers, which are basically long, elongated speed breakers. And you can just take the Tiago over them at 30, 35 kmph and it stays pretty stable, which is, I mean, honestly, it just shows me that this car can take a decent amount of bad roads and keep you comfortable still while at it. In the handling department also, I think the Tiago EV, it's not setting any benchmarks, but it's, as I said, just like the motor, it's zippy. It likes to dart into corners. The steering, it's easy to use, it's responsive. So you're not really jostling around much to make a corner or just go around a bend. In that sense, the Tiago EV feels a lot like a regular little hatchback. Now, just a quick range check for all of you guys who are still following the 100 to 0 test. We are at 88%. The indicated range is 170 kilometers, so that's gone back up again. We've covered about 26.6 kilometers and I'm using 107 watt-hours per kilometer. You know what? I'm being a little conservative on the Tiago just because we were in the city, but now I've gotten onto the Yamuna Expressway, which is where the coffee shop where I'm headed is. So now it's time to give it the beans and to see where the battery comes to a rest when we reach our coffee shop. So it's time to give you another range update. We are at 72%. We've covered 50 kilometers. Indicated range stands at 135 kilometers and I'm consuming 125 watt-hours per kilometer. Let's go. So, I have my coffee, the Tiago EV is parked, and let me just give you a quick range update. We are at 63%, the indicated range left is 126 kilometers, the average electricity consumption has been 131 watt-hours per kilometer, and I've covered a total of 62.7 kilometers. Now, putting all those numbers aside, how was the experience of getting to this place, of getting to this coffee shop via the Yamuna Expressway? And I have to say this, as soon as I got onto the highway, I put the Tiago EV into sport mode. Yes, it does have a sport mode. It gives the electric motor a little bit more oomph, makes the throttle a little bit more responsive. And while it does get you up to speeds quickly, it's not quick enough. The thing is, you can get up to 80-90 kmph pretty quickly, but post that, when you put your foot down, want to make a quick overtake, that's where you find the Tiago EV to be a little bit lacking. And that's the one chink in its armor why I don't think this is a great highway car. It can do the job, but it won't be all that pleasant of an experience. Now, the second thing is, once I put the pedal to the metal on the expressway, my range started to fall down a little too quickly. My average electricity consumption, which was around 100-110 watt-hours per kilometer, creeped up to 130-140 watt-hours per kilometer. So, that is a bit of a problem, that the range you see on the computer will start falling down very quickly once you start driving on the highway at highway speeds. Now, apart from using this car in the city on the highway, you're also going to be ferrying your family around in this car, right? So, it needs to be a little bit practical. And on that front, inside the passenger compartment, things are on a happy note because you've got two cup holders for the front passengers, you've got a good decent amount of storage space for your wallet or your phone ahead of where the gear lever is supposed to be, because in this it's a rotary dial, which I'm honestly not a big fan of. And you've also got one space at the rear for the rear passengers to store a water bottle or any wallet or any phone they might like. Where things get a bit problematic, that's the boot. Now, inside the boot, you can really only fit in 2 overnight travel bags plus a couple of soft bags. That is it. If I try and put my riding bag, which is about this much big, it carries all my motorcycle riding gear, there's no space left in the boot after that. And that is another reason why I believe this car will not really do well on highway trips, because you need some place to keep that luggage, right? And with that, we come to the end of my living experience with the Tiago EV. But it's not the end of this video, because we still have one more thing remaining, and that's the 100 to 0 range test of the Tiago EV. So, you know what? Let's start driving again. Let's get back home. I can't wait to see how many kilometers I will have driven by the time this thing reaches 0%. See you then. Now, we are on our way back from our coffee place. Home is about 50 kilometers away, but we'll probably have to drive a little bit more to get the Tiago's EV battery to go down to 0%. But it's time for a range update, and that is because we are at 50%. It's showing us 90 kilometers of indicated range. I've covered 82.3 kilometers, and my average electricity consumption stands at 135 watt hours per kilometer. And with that, on we go. Alright, in our range test, we have hit our next milestone, and that is 25%. The range stands at, that's the indicated range, stands at 51. We've covered about 128.3 kilometers, and the average electricity consumption stands at 129 watt hours per kilometer. Now, I have to note something over here, that we are below 25% at this point of time, yet the Tiago EV has not reduced any power output. The driving experience still remains the same of what it was when you started driving at 100%, so that's a good thing. Alright, so here's a quick range update for you. We're down to 13%, and now where I was getting my indicated range, over there it's written recharge, so I don't know what my range is anymore, and that's the indicated range. Apart from that, I've covered 146.6 kilometers, and my average electricity consumption is 133 watt hours per kilometer. Luckily, I'm still in sport mode, and the motor seems to be responding almost the same way it was earlier. The only thing that's changed on the instrument cluster is that where my range was, it's now written recharge. Alright, as you can see, the day has turned into late evening, the sun has gone down, and I have another range update for you. In fact, this one has come up because I've certainly got recharge written on my screen in front of me in the digital instrument cluster where I was getting my range earlier. My battery percentage, now that's down to 11%. The recharge warning came at 13%, and my trip, well, that's at 148.1 kilometers right now, and my average electricity consumption is 133 watt hours per kilometer. In fact, my range has just gone down to 10% right now, and now there are two warning lights on in my digital instrument cluster, but surprisingly, I am still in sport mode. Although I can feel this, that when my recharge warning had come, the power did start to dial down. Even though I was still in sport mode, acceleration was not too slow, but I could feel a difference before when I was driving at a higher battery percentage. And it just feels like right now, the power has gone down even further. In fact, I have experienced this before. It happened at 11% when I was driving this car earlier, and now my power is seriously limited. Overtaking that e-rickshaw back there was a slightly daunting task, and I know from experience, while I can't go to that speed right now, my top speed right now is limited to 52 kmph. I'm going to try and get to a patch where I can reach that speed, but I have literally very little acceleration left, below 10%. So I don't know how much range is left. We've covered 148.5 kilometers, and my average electricity consumption stands at 134. And with that, onwards to 0%. So now if you can hear this beep, it's to tell me that the Tiago's battery is down to 5%. Another range milestone for us. We still don't know what our range is because it's still written recharge there. I've covered 156.9 kilometers and my average electricity consumption remains around 134 watt hours per kilometer. Now I think we're down to 5%. This range test should not last too long. So I'll start summing up my thoughts. And the thing over here is, as I had experienced over the last 3 months, and this range test has also reaffirmed this, the Tiago remains a great city car, but 157, I think we'll go up to probably like 165, 168, maximum 170 kilometers. That for highways is cutting it a bit too close. That's the thing. And another thing, that last 10% is not actually usable. Definitely, you don't want to be on the highway when the battery kicks into its last 10%, and that's because the car becomes so slow, you get limited to 52 kmph, that it's almost impossible to drive, and you're a sitting duck for people coming from behind. You become a moving hazard on the road. And this feeling is very much prominent in the city as well, even though you don't do higher speeds than 50, 60 in the city also. But when you're trying to get a move on, like overtaking some e-rickshaws was becoming a little bit difficult. So yeah, I mean, the usable range of the Tiago EV has to be the 100 to 10% bracket. The last 10% has to be an emergency measure. If you are running out of range, need to get to a charging point and things like that. Okay, I can't believe this video just doesn't want to end, because we are down to 2% and the driving experience is pretty much the same since 10%. There's nothing that's changed over there. I've been going round and round my house, around my sector actually, and every time I go around my sector, I lose 1%. So the plan is I'm going to roll the car into my house at 1%, probably try and see if I can get it to 0% by just going forward and reversing over there. But even if you go down to 1%, I mean, it will not be 0, but we'll have a good idea of what this car can do, the real world range. And one thing I forgot to tell you, I was driving in sport mode earlier, below 10% also, but once I shifted to drive, it no longer allowed me to shift into sport mode back. So we're down to 1% actually. Okay, now fingers crossed, I'm hoping my range does not run out, because this is going to be really bad. I'm actually outside my sector right now. So we're gonna pump this back a little. Please do not die on me, car. Now we have been through thick and thin together. 163.9 kilometers of thick and thin to be very exact, and I don't want to stop in the middle of the road. It is at 1%. Please don't die on me, car. I'm counting on you right now. At 1%, I'm driving into my lane. I'm still like 100 meters down that way. So, what do you think, Sunil will make it? Sunil thinks yes. I mean, 164.1. So the good thing here is that the controls all remain operable. If I want to change the region at this point of time, I can do that. If I want to just shift gears, do whatever, everything is working in that sense. The only thing is my power, my torque output, my speed output, that has been limited. So my good friend Karan has actually reached home ahead of us and opened the gate for us. We are at 1%. We are at 1%. I think I'm gonna treat this as 0, because I don't want to push the car back. I mean, honestly, I have no words for it. So it's done 164.2 kilometers. The charge is at 1%. The average electricity consumed during this entire trip has been 133 kilometers. And to be really honest, I mean, this is not a bad job. 164 kilometers in the city will allow most of you to do your weekly commutes to office and back, and maybe visit a few friends around home, get some groceries, all on one charge. And even if it's a little bit more than that, if your weekly commutes are a little bit more than that, you can charge it twice in a week. That's not a big problem. So again, as I said in the beginning, good city car, not so good highway car, and definitely a very budget friendly EV that works. That was all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to watch more such videos like this where we live with these cars, do real world testing on them, and tell you what and how they behave, what they act like, how they behave in the real world, well, you know what? You know where to drop a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next one, goodbye.